of assistance that the students need. I am also a Daca recipient, and so it is such a privilege to be able to be in this space and work with you all. And I just want to add that since you're here, I'm just so excited that you are exploring the opportunity to learn more about advanced parole. It's such a great opportunity, and we're here to help you and walk you through it. So this is a big first step. So congratulations to you. Nice to meet you, everyone.
And then these it's part of the team here at UCR that helps me process all of the requests that we submit to immigration offices. So if you don't deal with me directly, you'll be dealing with Lorena and Erika here on the team. So we're excited to work with you all as we explore advanced parole. And so before we get started, I really do want to start the presentation with the understanding that of where advanced parole and Daca, for that matter, stand legally. And so I just want to apprise everybody of the continuing pending federal court litigation revolving around Daca as a whole. We still have the state of Texas v. United States, where the judge has already found that Daca was unlawful, but it kind of put a hold on its decision as it relates to those that already have the benefit. And so those that are applying for the first time, their applications cannot be decided based on this court case, but those that already received the benefit will retain it until further notice, right? And so what that means is that the future of Daca remains unclear. I know the understatement of probably the decade, right? But as of today, those that do have Daca are eligible to apply for advanced parole in accordance with the original memorandum that was issued back in 2012. So what this means is that it gives those that have Daca the opportunity to travel while having the status of deferred action. And what is advanced parole? I know that we use it pretty regularly, and it's fairly well known within the immigrant community, particularly those that are or very active on social media. We know that a lot of us know somebody that has Daca that have traveled abroad, and so the opportunity to travel abroad while having Daca is this concept of given advanced permission to leave the country, right? The status of having Daca allows you the opportunity to request this advanced permission to leave the country without really affecting your immigration status here in the United States. Advanced parole is a legal fiction that allows you to physically depart the United States, but legally, you're never really leaving the United States and the current status that you currently hold. And so with this granted permission, you don't risk your status here in the United States, and you don't risk the status of Daca itself or future eligibility. And so it's just a little quick refresh or a quick little reminder of what this whole process that we're going to be discussing today is about, and it's advanced permission to leave the country. Under the original memorandum that was shared or published, there are three reasons under which, or three categories under which a Daca recipient can receive this advanced parole traveling permit. Humanitarian is one that is very well used. Another one is educational, and the last one is employment. Today, we're going to be focusing on educational study abroad, or rather traveling abroad, but know that there are other reasons why a Daca recipient might need to travel, and something that we might be able to help here in the center. So if you know somebody that is not necessarily interested in traveling for educational purposes, but has maybe a humanitarian or employment related, they can also reach out to our office, and then we can do a one-on-one consult as to whether they're eligible to receive that benefit. But today we will be focusing on educational study abroad, and the logistics behind how we can request this application or this permit. All righty. The trip logistics for traveling abroad are pretty complicated, right? We need to determine, or we need to work collaboratively with different offices here on campus. We need to have kind of like an idea and dates of a program that you're interested in. And this, you'll be working with LaSharon to really determine what program you want to go to and to understand, or rather gather, the dates that you'll be traveling or being absent from the country. DACA Advanced Parole period really varies, right? Depending on the program that you're interested. We've had people that travel for only a small period of time to a really prolonged period of time. And it really depends on the actual specific program that you're interested in participating and whether we are documenting that travel with sufficient evidence to support your application. We've had people travel for, again, for like from a period of a couple of weeks to a year, right? And it's not unheard of. What is important is for us to submit your application in time so that we receive an approval for you to depart the country prior to your program starting. And so what the logistics requires is for us to have this in mind when we're searching for a program that we're interested, because right now, the average length of time that we've seen application be adjudicated under, it's a 6-month period of time. So 6 months from the time that we send off the application, do we not see a response on the approval? I mean, on the application itself. And we don't receive approvals until about 6 months from the time that we submit the application. And so if you're right now considering a trip or a program that starts in about 3 or 4 months, it's unlikely that we're going to get your traveling permit in time for you to start the program, right? For you to depart the United States within those 4 months. So have that in mind when you're looking for programs or when you're thinking of traveling. It's best that you look for those that are more than 6 months from the date that you're submitting the application. Other items that you want to consider are the DACA validity period, right? Because if you have a DACA status that is going to expire within the next 3 or 4 months, that is something that we need to process before we process your advanced parole permit, right? So we want to make sure that your DACA status does not lapse from the time that you apply to the time that you're scheduled to return to the United States. Luckily, our office can help you with both, right? Our office can help you process the DACA renewal and the advanced parole application if this is something that you're interested in, but just make a note that this might extend the amount of time that you need to submit before you actually depart to the program. So if you need to renew your DACA status before applying for advanced parole, that adds a couple of months to the time that you need to account for before applying for a program. Okay, and then the last one, the third item here is that we also want to account for unexpected travel delays, right? Given the pandemic that we're still living under, we need to account for unexpected travel delays. And this is something that we can discuss internally or when we meet with the clients when we're submitting the application as to when the program ends and allow for a cushion beyond that after the program terminates so that we can account for any unexpected traveling delays due to COVID. The application for traveling with advanced parole is very straightforward. We have to document where you're going to, provide proof of your DACA status, proof of your identity, and then supporting documents, right? The supporting documents are gonna come from several offices here on campus, and as well from your from a student declaration itself. The Office of Undocumented Student Programs has helped us create kind of a template, and you'll be working closely with their office to really gather all of this before you meet with us so that we can expedite the process. And I think Anna is going to touch more on these items, but generally this is what we include with an advanced parole application. We want to introduce yourself as an applicant and the reason why you want to take this trip to study abroad. We want to document the amount of time that you're going to be abroad, and providing concrete evidence that specifies those states that you're going to be abroad, right? And lastly, there is a filing fee with this application, and it's a filing fee of $575. And so we will discuss later whether there's resources available to that students can access, where we can provide filing fees, but know that there is a filing fee associated with this advanced parole application. Note, if you have to renew your DACA application as well, then that increases the amount that you should account for, right? Because then you would have the additional $495 filing fee that is needed for renewing your DACA application. And these are items that you should be thinking about because these are expenses associated with study abroad due to your status that are not necessarily required for other individuals. Once we send off the application to USCIS reviews the application and determines whether they are going to grant or deny your request. If they grant, they will provide a traveling document, which is very similar to the one you're seeing on your screen right now. It is a piece of paper that really only has your name, your address, your status, and whether you've been approved. The thing where this document might vary a little for some of us is where it says the entry periods, right? Like whether it's going to be a multiple entry permit or whether it's going to be a single entry permit, right? A multiple entry permit is usually given to those individuals that are embarking on a research project, right? For example, where if they have to travel from UCR to multiple countries to conduct research, well, then they have to re-enter the country every so often, and USCIS takes that into consideration and decides whether they'll approve it or not, right? And that will permit you to go, for example, to Canada and then come back to the United States, and then go to, I don't know, Mexico and come back to the United States, while under the umbrella of researching, right? Under the umbrella of educational purposes. And so that's very possible, and that's something that we can also apply for, and it will be the exact same document. A single entry permit only allows you to depart the US and then re-enter only one time. Well, when you depart, you take this document with you, right? Because this is the document that you will present upon entering the United States again. This is something that will be presented with your passport at a point of entry, and the officer will inspect it and stamp down here when you're allowed to re-enter, right? So this, when you're abroad, you want to guard it with your life, right? Because this is very important. We will retain a copy of it, like a scanned copy. We encourage you to have the scanned version saved digitally of this, but really, you really want to be very careful because you will be traveling with this, and this is kind of like your golden ticket to re-enter the United States. So it's really important that when we get this, that you really secure it and keep it safe while traveling abroad. Because when you enter, you will present this entry document to the CBP officer along with your passport, right? You want to be fully prepared to answer any questions that the CBP officer may ask. because it is almost very, very likely that you will be sent to a secondary inspection after you enter. So you present yourself to the CBP officer. The CBP officer inspects the document and sends you to secondary inspection, where they will either ask you more questions about your trip. It's possible that they might ask you for documentation to provide as evidence that you were in fact on a study abroad trip, and examine your passport. So again, we'll go over this when we meet on one-on-one, but definitely this is something to expect at the time of returning to the US. Things to carry with you include the traveling permit, obviously, DACA approval notice, any IDs that you have here in the US, and the employment authorization card. Things to keep in mind when returning back to the US. There are usually two lines when entering a port of entry, one for US citizens and one for non-US citizens. And so you'll be going to the non-US citizen line, and that's where you will be processed by a CBP officer. I want to say that over the existence of advanced parole, we are seeing that CBP officers are becoming more and more familiar with the process, where at the beginning, there was a lot of gray area. A lot of students or a lot of DACA individuals encountered some very unpleasant experiences with CBP officers. I'm not saying that isn't the case anymore, but we are seeing that more and more districts of CBP are more well versed with advanced parole and kind of know already what the process is like and how to process individuals that present themselves at port of entries with an advanced parole permit. Now, there is a risk associated with traveling, right, with advanced parole. Advanced parole is not a guarantee to enter the US. We definitely underscore this every time that we meet with the student. And we screen. Our job here at the office is to truly screen each applicant and really see if there are any red flags that may be present that may prevent the individual from coming back to the US. And so we obviously will not encourage you to travel if we identify one red flag in your case. But know that at the time that you're presenting yourself at the CBP point of entry, that it's possible that you would be denied re-entry. One of the reasons why you may be denied re-entry is if you stayed beyond the amount of time that is given to you, right? Say your traveling permits say that you had to enter the 24th of January and you present yourself on the 25th. That's a reason why the CBP officer may deny entry. Another reason is you committed a crime abroad, right? There's a criminal history and it's been developed while you were outside of the country. That's another reason why you may be denied entry. We haven't seen any of our students, luckily, and I knock on wood because I don't want to jinx it, but we haven't seen any of our students be denied entry. And we've been successful at having all of our students be allowed back into the United States. And this is because we do a thorough investigation of your case and we do a thorough screening for any potential issues. If we identify any, then you will not be considered as a candidate for advanced parole through our office. And so just keep that in mind. It's not a guarantee, and I'm kind of like legally obligated to tell you this, but even though it's not a guarantee, the likelihood of being denied entry is low unless you have like a cause, right? Like, unless you have a very serious cause to be denied entry. Okay, well, things to really consider. you need DACA at the time that you're applying for advanced parole, right? So if your DACA is expiring, please reach out to our office so that we can process your DACA renewal before we apply for DACA. I mean, before we apply for advanced parole. You cannot depart the United States and ask for advanced parole while abroad. If you depart the United States and request advanced parole while abroad, it will be denied, right? And you are jeopardizing your immigration status here in the United States. Number 3, deadlines. Deadlines are super important because we are working with 3 different offices or more here at UCR, right? We are working with LaSharon's office and Anna's office, and we're trying to expedite the processing of your application as quickly as possible because of the time frame that it takes from us to submit and receive an approval. And so you need to work with the other offices to make sure that you are applying and submitting your documents as required, as well as submitting and responding to our request from our office as required. You cannot use advanced parole as a vacation, right? If you are, well, I don't think we're going to have this problem here, but you are required to partake in the program that you're saying that you're going to participate, right? We cannot request this permit just for purposes of vacation because it will be denied. And if you say you're going to go somewhere and not go, then your likelihood of being denied entry has just increased at the border, right? And then consider that there are immigration requirements for the countries that you're going to, right? So it's not only immigration requirements here domestically, but also to the countries that you're going to be traveling to. So just like the US has immigration requirements and immigration procedure, so does every other country for allowing non-citizens to enter each country. So keep that in mind because these are all deadlines that you have to comply with for a single program, right? And it's several people, several moving parties, several moving parts moving at the same time towards a common goal. At the center, you will be working with me, Lorena, and Erika. And so just keep that in mind. Sometimes we have students that reach out to me and say like, hey, Erika reached out to me, but I haven't heard of, I don't know of her, or like, does she even work with you? So just know that you may not receive emails directly from me, but we are a team and we work together to get your advanced parole processed as quickly as possible. Now I have a question slide, but I know that we're going to hold questions to the end, LaSharon and Anna. So I'll go ahead and hand this off to either of you, and then we'll go ahead and take questions at the end of the presentation.
Yeah, so we'll take questions at the end. So I'll share my screen next. Let's see. All right. So hi, everyone. Again, my name is Anna Korea, Director for Undocumented Student Programs. So let me make that larger. So now you just figured out what advanced parole is, what the requirements will be. So we'll be going over next steps. So in regards to next steps, the first thing I want to emphasize is that if you can, plan a year or more in advance. As you'll be seeing in the next coming slides, a timeline and meeting those timelines is very important. This is going to be a lot. You probably haven't noticed yet, but advanced parole requires a lot of steps, and so does study abroad. And Sharon will cover the requirements for study abroad. But as you navigate studying abroad, you're going to have those two competing sometimes deadlines. And then aside from that, you're also a student. So maybe this whole process happens during midterms or finals. So you need to plan for that. You don't want to be worrying about getting something to Alfonso in the middle of your finals. So that's why I really emphasize, if you can, plan a year more in advance. It's going to make your life a lot easier. You're going to be going through it much smoother if you're trying to do everything kind of last minute. So with that, I do want to go over kind of some timelines. LaSharon will go over them more because they are part of our study abroad timelines. But just to give you a quick reference as I talk about the next steps, if you're looking into applying for summer of 2022, the deadline for that kind of just passed. So first off, the deadline that Study Abroad has on their website for students might not be the deadline that we have for our advanced parole students. And the reason is advanced parole. Sometimes because of that, we need to make sure you apply for the study abroad program earlier. So that way we know if you're in or in the program, so we can request advanced parole. In order for us to request advanced parole for you, or you to request advanced parole, you have to be admitted into the program. You cannot say on your letter, I plan to apply. It has to be, I've been admitted. So with that summer, it's kind of out of the picture at this point. I don't think our team has enough time and resources to submit those advanced parole on time to receive the permission. And as well, it was mentioned that it's taking about 6 months to get approved. So that just kind of won't happen. Then we have for the January of 2023. So that can be either winter quarter or spring semester. So generally for that one, your deadline would have come around, but I'll let LaSharon talk in her next presentation if she's able to be flexible on that. And so she is, we might be able to push it in if you can get through the whole steps in like 2 weeks. But that one's like a maybe. I'll let LaSharon talk more about that one. But the ones that definitely moving forward you can do will be for summer of 2023 and spring of 2023. So those ones, if you're thinking about applying for study abroad, you need to start thinking about this because your deadline is going to come up in this April. So again, it's like almost like a year-long process. So just keep that in mind that generally we recommend you start the process a year in advance, just to give you enough time so you can meet the entire deadlines. But if you can do it more than a year, that's better. So if you're thinking, let's say you're a freshman and you're thinking of going your junior year, you can start that process already. And I'll talk about what part of the process you can start thinking about already. So what are your steps? So your first step is to attend a workshop. So you've all done that step already. You're at the workshop. So congrats, you've done the first step. So the next one will be to create a flexible plan. So Alfonso talked about this, about how sometimes your DACA expiration date and your DACA renewal timeframe might prevent you from studying abroad for a very specific term. So if your DACA expires in the summer, you're not going to be able to study in that summer because your DACA will expire. So we want to create a plan. You don't want to be a freshman planning to study abroad your junior semester in fall. And then as you're applying, you're like, oh wait, I can't because of my DACA renewal. So we want to make a plan. So there's a worksheet, which I'll go over in a couple more slides. But you'll be able to find it on that link as well. And so we'll make sure that we know what term you can study abroad based on your DACA renewal timeframe. And so then you'll schedule a meeting with me. And so we'll kind of go over all the expectations and the cost. So with that, I'll go over right now that form I talked about. So when you meet with me, this is what we'll cover. So we'll get your information. We'll figure out when your DACA expires, when your timeframe renewal occurs, when you should schedule an appointment for a renewal. And this is a cost you're going to have to consider, the $495 if you have to renew. LaSharon will talk about a bit later about if there's funding, and if there's funding, how you can request that funding. We'll talk about the purpose for your study abroad. So if it's, for your advanced parole. So if it's study abroad, it'll be educational. And again, the fee for that is $575. So we want to make sure you plan for that. And if you don't have the funding, that you plan to apply for any funding that may be available. Do you have a valid passport? So a passport will be required to leave the country, and that passport has to come from your birth country. And so that's something that if you don't have a passport, you need to do ahead of time. So that's something you can start right now. Like right now, if you're a freshman and you want to study abroad your senior year, you can start looking into, how do I get a passport from my country, home country? What are the requirements? Where can I go? Some countries have embassies and consulates everywhere. And there's some countries that might only have a consulate in like Washington, D.C. So you want to make sure you know how to get a passport from your country and how much it's going to cost you. Some of the passports countries offer like option of a 10-year passport. So again, you can start that early. So you can get it now for a 10-year and you'll be good through your UCR education. But we want to make sure that you plan for that. So you're not surprised 6 months before you're departing, you're like, I didn't know I need a passport and they're giving me all these requirements. One other thing to note, and we'll go over in the meeting with myself, is that a visa is not the same as a passport. So a passport's a travel document, identity document that your home birth country gives you that's required to, travel abroad. A visa is basically a permission that the host country grants you to come into their country, and their visa requirements will be different. Some countries may not require a visa, some countries might. It's kind of a little tricky, and this is something you're gonna have to lead the research on. So let's say you wanna go to Hong Kong. Hong Kong will have different requirements on obtaining a visa, and those requirements will vary also based on your home country. So they might have different requirements from someone that was born in Guatemala to someone that was born in Mexico. So that's why it gets very complicated sometimes doing their research, is that they might say, if you're a Korean citizen, these are your requirements. It might be very easy or harder. And it might be very different if you were born in Peru. So we want to make sure you have that research, and also you understand what it may cost. I remember prior we had advanced parole, there was one country, I don't remember which country, but had a requirement that you had to show that you had like $5,000 in the bank account. So for that student, it was just not possible. They couldn't get $5,000 in their bank account to fill that requirement. So at that point, it was like, okay, we have to think about another country, because you don't have $5,000 in your bank account. And it's not like you have the resources to make that happen. And so on the form, you'll see we want to think about different options in case one doesn't work out. And so what you'll fill out with me on our one-on-one mostly is the time frame. So we're going to be going through each quarter and semester and seeing if that semester works for you. If it doesn't, if it's a little iffy, might be a little tricky. So that way, let's say we determine spring semester does work. You have here when you have to submit your AP. But let's say for some reason it doesn't work, like maybe you're like, you know what, I'm not going to work spring semester because I want to focus on getting a job so I can save up more money and do more touristy things. You'll have this with you to be, okay, but I can still do it summer, or maybe I can't do it summer, so I know I'll have to push it all the way back to fall. So we'll do this with you to ensure that you know when you can study abroad. And then in addition to that, if we figure out which quarter you want to study abroad, we'll fill out this portion here. In this portion, again, it'll be what you will give study abroad program, should they still have funding available. And Sharon will talk a bit more about that. And again, we'll note here what your next steps will be. And so you'll have it here outline what your next steps will be. I generally don't share the documents about the first phase after this with students, because I don't want you applying for advanced parole by yourself. Actually, none of us here want you applying for advanced parole by yourself. Sometimes students will say, well, I have a friend that applied for themselves and they did it great. They were able to come back, so I'm just going to ask them for help. We won't let you do that. You have to go with our process and our legal services in order to study abroad, because we just don't want you in a situation where something went wrong and you can't come back. We just don't want to risk that. And so as you'll see, you'll fill out this form. I'll ask you other questions, and these are questions that I cannot give you advice, but they're like things that I want to know for Alfonso that he might want to look into or give you more advice or more recommendations on. And so it seems like a lot, but I guarantee you it's very straightforward. It's just about being organized and having a timeline and deadline. And so once you do this, the process will be much easier versus not having a timeline to go with it. So let's go back to this. So again, you can always schedule an appointment with me using this link. So you'll see my availability. So it's actually an option for study abroad. So you'll select that one and we'll fill out the forms. And then after that, you will start the study abroad process. And so what will happen is that you'll reach out to study abroad. And generally you'll reach out to them like maybe a week after you meet with me. So you let them know what term you want to study abroad and what country. And this email will be for the following purposes. It will be to let them know that you need your acceptance or your rejection expedited. So we want to know if you're in the study abroad program as soon as possible, because we want to move forward with submitting advanced parole as soon as we can. If we can submit that 6 months before, like at 8 months, that's even better for you. The sooner we know that you've been approved for advanced parole, it would be better for you. So we just want to move that along as fast as we can. It would also facilitate communications between study abroad and USP. So we're going to be working together a lot, because sometimes I might need something from LaSharon Like I may be, like Sharon, I need this letter in order for Alfonso to include it in the advanced parole process. Or do you have a copy of the course? We can't find it and we need that. So it just helps with facilitation. And I forgot to note, it's important that you let study abroad know that you're reaching out to them as a Daca recipient. So that's very important that you note, because that they will know, how to move forward with your process and application as well. So let's say you're not sure about study abroad. So let's say you meet with me, and if you ask me, Anna, I don't know if I want to go to Chile or I want to go to Argentina, I am going to say, I don't know. I'm not a person that has had the opportunity to travel abroad. So if you ask me anything about traveling abroad, like what countries are the best, what programs are the best, I'm going to be like, I don't know. I'm going to tell you, talk to LaSharon. LaSharon will be able to kind of coach you to figure out what the best program is. So if your questions are, what program should you consider based on your major? How much will this study abroad program cost? Questions about requirements or deadlines, as LaSharon will talk about, different programs have different requirements. As a Daca student, what is your real deadline? Those kinds of questions, LaSharon will answer. Again, if you ask me, I don't know if I want to go to England or Germany, I'll be like, I don't know, like all I've seen what's been in the movies. So you know as much as I do, unfortunately. So LaSharon will be able to, really coach you in that process. So once you've been admitted to, now you apply to study abroad program. So let's say now you know the term and the country you want to go to, you will apply for the study abroad program and the scholarships. LaSharon will talk more about the scholarships, but it's really important that you apply for scholarships. Again, LaSharon will cover the financial aid components along with the financial resources. But the worst thing you can do is let a scholarship pass. When you used to have advanced parole, it was really frustrating to see students say like, I have to put my airline tickets on my credit card. And then you look them up and you're like, you didn't apply for the scholarship. Like you're just putting your airline tickets on a credit card when you could have gotten a scholarship. So make sure you also count into that work is doing the scholarship applications. So then once you're admitted, you're going to start the advanced parole process. So you're going to let me know, and I'm going to send you all the information that you need for what we call a phase 1. So that's the document gathering, that's the writing of your letter of declaration. So you're going to start that process, and that's going to include also taking a copy of your passport, copies of your Daca work authorization. And so once you're in this process, you'll do like a quick 30-minute meeting with me, and I'll share all those templates with you. Again, I don't share that before this process because students sometimes want to do it on their own, and we don't want to give you these tools and you think that means you can do it on your own. You have to do it with Alfonso's help. We don't want students trying to represent themselves in the advanced parole process when it comes to UCR study abroad programs. And so once you gather all that, we consider that like a draft. And so that's when you'll have the opportunity to meet with the UC Immigrant Legal Service Center. And so at that point, they're going to review and make sure everything's great. You don't meet with them beforehand because generally myself and the USP team, we're in charge of like doing the edits, the grammar edits, the spelling edits. And they're more tasked of actually doing the legal review and like the legal advice. And so we want to just make sure everything is smooth as possible. So there's not too many follow-up meetings because their appointment links tends to be a little more busy than ours. So once you have that, what we call a draft from phase 1, you'll meet with them. Try to meet with them maybe 7 months before the departure. And the reason why is that we want you to submit advanced parole at least 6 months from departure. And so the reason why it's 7 months before departure to meet with them is in case there's something that might not be there. But again, if we're doing things quick, maybe it's not the 7 months, but the main goal is to submit advanced parole 6 months before departure. If we can submit advanced parole much earlier, like let's say 8 months, that's even better for you because then let's say you need to buy your airplane tickets and you already have advanced parole in your hand, you probably feel more confident buying the airplane tickets because those are going to get pricey depending on where you go. So for a note is that you're still going to have to fulfill all the other study abroad requirements. So study abroad is going to have other requirements such as departure and health clearances and airfare purchases. So again, this is why a timeline is very important, is that you don't just have to worry about advanced parole. You have to worry about all the study abroad requirements, all the visa requirements, all while still being a full-time student. So when I say that this can be stressful, I'm not over exaggerating. We just had a couple of students go through that process and they were like, yes, this was a lot, but I will tell you this, it's worth it. Years ago, we had study abroad and every single student that did study abroad will come back saying it was worth it. Was it a lot of work? Was it a little stressful? Yes, but was it worth it? 100%. We never had a student regret saying that was too much work for this process. So you're definitely going to enjoy the process of being abroad and coming back and having that experience. But we just want to make sure that before you get there, everything goes smoothly and perfect as we can. So with that, I'll have study abroad go next, and they're going to get all to the fun stuff.
So I'm LaSharon McLean Perez again. So for those of you who are students here, if you start our process on My UCR Abroad, this presentation would be classified as your first step to learn abroad. The difference is when you go in to watch that in there, you will notice none of the DACA slides exist in that presentation. So at the end of today, because I will have your information, you will get credit already from completing your first step to learn abroad, but I also will send you a copy of this since this has specific DACA information in it. So who we are, of course, you have myself. I'm one of the assistant directors. I oversee OAP and UCAP programs, in which I will talk about. I am one of you. I am a Highlander alum. I did my undergraduate in theater and I studied abroad in Italy and then did my graduate program in Australia. And then my counterpart, who's also here, do you want to do your own introduction since you're hanging out here?
Thanks, LaSharon. Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. My name is Macy Ring. I'm also Assistant Director of Education Abroad and also a UCR alum. I graduated in 2005. And I got to learn abroad 1 year in Canada and 1 summer in South Korea.
Thanks, Macy. So we are here to assist you through the study abroad process. So common myths. This is where we're going to get a little bit interactive because I don't know how to not be interactive. What are some things that you think reasons why students do not want to go abroad? So you can use the chat feature for this. Or if you want to unmute yourself and tell me why you think students don't want to go abroad. Cost, definitely. Some people are like, this is expensive. I can't do this. Any other reason? Hard to get approved. Fear of not returning back to the US, definitely. Lack of guidance. It's too dangerous. I like that one. Lack of guidance. That's the first time I think I've ever seen that one as a reason. Well, definitely there are a lot of different reasons why students give us reasons that they don't want to go abroad. Being the first. Well, the great thing about it is me and Macy are the first in our families not only to go to school as college students, we're also the first to go abroad. So we definitely understand what it means to be the first. Well, definitely, you've already brought this up. It's too dangerous to go overseas. It's safer to stay at home. For those of you who receive the UCRPD notifications, I often say, sometimes it seems not to be safe to be at UCR. The good thing is we best prepare you for going abroad. There's a saying that there is no guaranteed safety in life. You could be sitting at home. Honestly, I just had a tree fall out in the back of my yard Thank goodness it went one way and not on the house. So safety is not guaranteed, but my team, we try to prepare you. You'll have pre-departure orientations before departing. And then once you leave, we just don't put you on a plane and say, see you when you see you. You're going to have on the ground support staff to help you. So you're going to have orientation when you arrive on your programs. Plus, my job is not really 8 to 5. When I have a student who is abroad, we're pretty much paying attention to you 24/7. So you're probably thinking, ooh, elephant in the room, COVID, pandemic, you've got no students abroad. Well, we've had students abroad this entire time, meaning since March of 2020, we've had to monitor students while they've been abroad. So definitely our students are resilient, and COVID is certainly not stopping them from finding an experience to go abroad. International experience isn't important for my future job or to my employer. I will admit I was a student. Of course, as a theater major, I thought, I'm just gonna go act and be the next Oprah, not realizing my whole entire job would be something international. And even if you don't have a job that's quote unquote international, you may be working for a company or organization that has a lot of international ties. So this type of experience really sets you apart from everyone else. One, American college students, quote unquote American college students, only 10% of them actually study abroad. So you're already setting yourself apart from the rest of your counterparts. And you've already got this extra layer of being a DACA student who actually studied abroad. You're really setting yourself apart. Not only that, you're going to learn a lot of different skills, whether it's problem solving, being unfamiliar with situations, learning new languages, learning new things about another culture. And of course, I can't make progress toward my degree if I go overseas. Well, the key word in study abroad is the study part. So our whole point is to make sure you stay on track and that what you're doing abroad somehow fits within your degree plan. So this hence why you're not only preparing ahead of time for the study abroad process, but you're now adding all this extra time for your advanced parole. So you can take courses in anything, whether it's for your major, minor, breadth requirements, language, electives, you name it, you can take whatever it is that you want to try to do while you're abroad. If you do not want to study, you want to do an internships, we have internships. You can volunteer, you can do research. We offer a lot of different opportunities. We would talk about programs, of course, in terms of maintaining your UCR student status. And a lot of our students tend to go as a senior, but we don't want you to wait till your senior year. We want you to really start thinking about this process early in your academic career. And then, of course, I cannot afford to study abroad. Well, we're going to talk about lots of different ways to make this possible. One, you also have an additional layer of things that you're going to require to come up with fees for. So this is where I tell students, when we start talking about finances, the one thing we want you to do is to pay attention and take advantage of everything that you are eligible for. So I certainly, as I keep going on through this presentation, we're going to talk a lot more about finances, but you can make it possible. One, we've had students who've made an education abroad experience work. And then, of course, lastly, does it really matter if you want to go abroad? Well, it does, because you're going to learn a little bit, something new about the academic field you're in. You're going to learn something new about yourself, something new about a culture, basically becoming familiar with the unfamiliar. So this really does matter. So programs. So our office oversees 3 types of programs. So the faculty-led education abroad program known as FLEAP, the University of California Education Abroad program known as UCAP, and the Opportunity Abroad program known as OAP. So the FLEAP program, you go out with UCR faculty in the summer, taking 2 courses anywhere from 5 to 7 weeks. The best way to think about this is it's really summer session abroad, because that's really all it is. With this program, because it's based on UCR faculty interests, it's ever changing every year. So whatever may be offered this year, something new may be offered in the next year and the year after that. So it will ever be changing. And because it is UCR credit, you can use all of your eligible financial aid that you receive. toward the program. Next is the UCAP program. This is the UC system-wide program at all of the UC campuses. So you have to be a UC student to participate in the program. There's over 43 different countries with a ton of programs to go on. There's summer-based, there's semester break, there's a few quarter programs and some year-long programs. With this type of program though, it's not just study, there are internship as well as research options available to students. Because it is a UC system-wide program, you are receiving UC academic credit. And because of that, once again, you can use all of the eligible aid that you receive. So our next type of program is OAP. So with OAP, this is probably our most flexible program. We work with other UCs. You could use another third-party organization. You could even do a direct enrollment abroad. Programs could be as short as 2 to 4 weeks or as long as a year. The big difference with this type of program, it's not just study, it could be internship, it could be research, it could be volunteer abroad, it could be teach abroad, it could be work abroad. So it is a very big umbrella. And because we are working with so many different entities, you could be almost anywhere in the world. So if one of the other two programs don't offer it, it could fall into the OAP program. The big difference is if you are doing an OAP program for credit, you are going to receive transfer credit, meaning you'll receive the letter grade and units for it, but it does not factor into your GPA like the other two programs. The other difference is because it is transfer credit, you can only use eligible federal and state aid. Now, being that with your status, there are a lot of aid that you may not be eligible for. So we usually do not recommend an OAP program for a student with DACA because there are a lot of aid you will not be able to use. So if you have a lot of UCR grant, you're not going to be able to use it on an OAP program. You can use it on the other two programs, but you cannot use it here. This is why we tend not to recommend an OAP program. Doesn't mean I've not had a DACA student do an OAP program, because we oftentimes have partners that offer low cost to no cost programs. So that's why I say we don't discount it, but those come up very rare. So those were our program types. So within that, we have our program options. So you'll have a full immersion program. Think of full immersion kind of like what you do at UCR. You're going to go to the foreign university and you're going to take classes with those students. But say you're going to go to Japan and first thing I'm going to ask you, do you speak Japanese? No. Then how are you going to do those classes? Non-immersion allows for you to go to Japan, not know the language, and take classes. So with those type of programs, they're going to be a list of classes that are going to be offered in English. They're usually going to either be taught to just UC students, or you're going to be taking classes with English speaking only students. The only difference is with a full immersion program, you'll have the entire institution's catalog available to you. But with the non-immersion program, the catalog is going to only get reduced down to a list of English speaking classes. So you're not going to have a lot of variety. The next type of program is a language and culture program. And that is exactly what it is. You're going to learn a language and maybe have 1 or 2 culture classes. So this is great if you still need to complete your foreign language requirements and you're a CHAS, School of Public Policy, Business, or a GSOE students, because you all need a language for your program. Next is a special focus type program. An example of this would be the Costa Rica program through UCAP. It's a tropical biology program. So if you tell me you're a dance major and you're interested, that's great. You can do that program. You're just not going to have any dance classes. You could dance with the trees in your free time. You're only going to have tropical biology classes. So many special focus programs are going to be geared to STEM majors, poli-sci, psychology, business, fine and performing arts, and some other little fields out there. But those are the main areas that will have special focus programs to geared toward their academic focus. And then, of course, the biggie, eligibility requirements. So all of our programs have a GPA requirement at the time of application. So we have a deadline coming up, matter of fact, next week. If that deadline next week is a 3.0, that means the students' fall grades, cumulative GPA needs to be a 3.0. So if you're a 2.7 or a 2.99, you want to pick another program in which your GPA you meet. Next, many programs have class level eligibility, meaning not necessarily at the time of application, but at the time of you participating on the program, you have specific class level standing. Some may be sophomore standing, some may be at junior level standing. So I don't know if I have any current freshmen in this presentation. Well, some freshmen already will have sophomore standing based on any AP credits or community college credits you've come in with. So it's not necessarily based on what your actual current standing when you got to UCR. We're looking at your credits for that. Next is language requirement. So some programs may require none. Some may require up to 2 years. Again, this is not going to be a requirement you need to meet at the time of application. For instance, if you're applying for a fall program and you're currently in Japanese 2, and that program requires 1 year of Japanese, we would select you conditionally that you complete Japanese 3 in the spring term. So as long as you can complete the requirement prior to you leaving, we're going to conditionally accept your application. Same thing with course prerequisites. You don't necessarily need to complete the requirement at the time of application, but you need to be able to complete it prior to leaving. And you're going to find a lot of those with course prerequisites with STEM related majors. So financing, the biggie. Money matters. And of course, I will say this is not like, okay, this is a cheap program, I can just do this. No, we want you to be thinking about all aspects of how you're going to finance it. This is our World Fest Education Abroad Fair Week. So Thursday, if you're thinking, okay, I want to do this, how am I going to think about money? One, our financial aid counselor, Sophia, is running a session that day to talk about financial aid and how to make it work. And then Macy is holding a scholarship workshop also that day. So we want you to take advantage of all of the resources we have here. So when I tell students, when you're thinking about financing a program, it's not just about, okay, the program cost. Well, yes, when you're looking at the figures and we're talking through the figures, your program cost may look like this exorbitant number, but that exorbitant number is going to be inclusive of your tuition, your housing, your food, your airline, your health insurance, and all these other little things that you're like, okay, hold on. I don't need those things here at UCR. Well, you're going to need those things while you're abroad. So if you're thinking, okay, I don't want to study abroad during this upcoming academic year, but maybe I'm like trying to think ahead, the 23-24 academic year, this is a great time for you to start thinking, how do you start saving? I always tell students, get on my Beg, Borrow, Steal plan. Beg, use your community. Students are very savvy. You have so many different ways of crowdfunding, using family and friends. If you have birthdays and holidays that are coming up, use that instead of getting gifts, use that time to set yourself a bank account and just have everyone donate to it. Borrowing money. When it comes to financial aid, I always say you want to talk to Sophia. You want to be able to take all of the aid that is eligible to you. I know some students are very loan adverse. I did not use any loans during my time at UCR, except for to study abroad. I could not have done it without taking a loan. So you're going to have to think about all the different ways. Some students get savvy, start trying to think about, okay, how do I start saving up? Do I need those new kicks? Do I need to go to the movies? Do I need coffee every single day? No, I don't. Don't need Starbucks every day. Not going to campus right now is saving me on my Starbucks spending. And then scholarships. Scholarships. Anna talked about earlier about scholarships. This is the one area, I don't care what kind of student you are at UCR, that's the one area where you break my heart. There's so much funding out there. All you need to do is apply. You should be applying to everything you are eligible. Now, there will be some scholarships you're not going to be eligible because they require you to be a US citizen, but there are a lot of scholarships that we have not only through our office, through some of our partners, that do not require you to have US citizenship. So you should be applying to every single one of them. And Macy definitely are going to cover a lot of those type of scholarships and how to write the best essays to get this funding. There's lots of money out there. Now, earlier we talked about, okay, if you have to come up with Daca fees or even advanced parole fees, well, you know that $2 you paid, you're like, okay, what? $2? I have no idea. Well, if you ever pay attention to your campus fee, $2 goes to education abroad every quarter that you're here at UCR. Well, the Highlander Advisory Committee, because we had a Daca student on there, wrote up a grant and wrote up a proposal. There is a half Daca grant out there. You can apply for that as part of your application through My UCR Abroad. And not only can you apply if you need to do Daca renewal and advanced parole, or if you just need advanced parole, you can apply for just the advanced parole grant. So take advantage of everything that is available to you. So next steps. So you're thinking, okay, how do I do this? Well, Anna told you to come to me if you're like, okay, how do I decide between Germany and Spain? Well, if you come to me and you ask me, well, where should I go? Don't ask me. I'm just going to pick a random country. But use this first part to think about what your goals are. What are your personal, academic, professional, and practical reasons for going abroad? Academically, you can tell me your major. I can give you a laundry list of programs for that major. But if you're only going to go to class and go home, that is going to be a very boring and abroad experience. So what do you want to do outside the classroom? What do you want to see? What do you want to eat? What do you want to engage with? Me personally, when I went abroad, I had no academic reason to go abroad. I only wanted to go abroad to date hot guys and eat good food. So I went to Italy to date hot guys and eat good food. In the past, I had one student, he had to finish Spanish requirements, but he had to take his surfboard. And I'm like, okay, how important is this surfboard? He goes, if I can't take it, I'm not going. So I'm like, okay, where in the world can you surf and learn Spanish? Oh, Costa Rica. He was excited. He could surf in the Pacific in the morning and go surf in the Atlantic in the afternoon or whatever. He was equal distance to both oceans. He was a very happy student. Not only was happy, he actually wound up extending his program so he could finish out his Spanish requirements. Then once you kind of think about your personal reasons, then professionally and practically, what else can you add on? Do you want to do an internship? Do you want to do research? Do you want to volunteer while you're on your program? So me, academically, no reason. Personally, hot guys, good food. Well, professionally and practically, I wind up teaching English as a second language. Prior to my time here at UCR, I taught preschool, which led to me to start teaching English to the local elementary students while I was living in Italy, which really helped me because I'm teaching a bunch of elementary students English while they're helping me with my Italian. So I did not realize that experience. By the time I got to grad school, I would actually wind up teaching at a language college while I was living in Australia. So some students, you will find themselves of, okay, hold on, I never thought about doing this, and wind up adding all these new skills on. So once you kind of answer those 4 things, the where becomes a little bit easier and we can figure out the how long. Once we figure out the where and the how, then we can figure out, okay, how are we going to fund this? What do we need? What are the requirements to do this? Do you need a visa? Now, I know earlier Anna talked about visa requirements. We work a lot with Sophia. So depending on what those visa requirements, oftentimes we write visa letters. If you're receiving financial aid to cover your program, Sophia creates a visa letter that covers those financial expenses so that a student can show that proof. So keep that in mind. So don't just discount something. If you have questions about the visa requirements and funding and your financial aid, this is where we say you're talking to so many offices. So you may need to be also talking to Sophia of, okay, do I have enough financial aid to meet this requirement? Of course, then, do you know application deadline dates? And we're definitely going to talk about that because your application deadline dates are going to be vastly different than what you see in our website. And then, of course, do you have a passport? So the great thing about you working with Anna prior to seeing me, if you don't have a passport, we already going to know what additional things are going to need to happen along the way. You may need to delay your programming because, of course, you're going to have that passport to apply for your advanced parole. So this is the good thing of you starting with her office before you get to me, so we know timing wise, does everything work out? And of course, planning well in advance. So Anna already talked a little bit about this, but I will provide some clarity. So this is the timeline for the 22-23 academic year. So if you're looking to do a summer fall year program, of course, you've already missed the deadline for our summer program start date. Technically, you've missed the deadline for our fall and year start dates. Now, if Alfonso says it's possible within a week or 2, because we do still have some programs that are open for a fall and year start. If he says it's possible to get done and he will give me a date that's like, this is a cutoff to get him the paperwork, we can be flexible and adjust our timeline to allow for you to still apply for a fall and year program. So our office is very flexible. A lot of things that we do, we set in time. So one, you're not rushing to do, but we also want to make sure you have enough time to talk to all the various people to get done. And so Alfonso will provide some clarity after I'm done. The next slide is for the winter spring year off cycle start date. So of course, you'll notice no matter when the program starts for winter, spring, or year for 22-23, our normal dead campus deadline is April 12th. You have plenty of time. So you've got time to make the April 12th deadline. So that's our normal campus deadline, irregardless of what student is. We always have to adjust the summer, fall, and year because there's so many dates for different programs. You would miss something if you went by the campus deadline. So this slide, this is a student testimonial from one of our last students who actually went abroad, who had DACA and advanced parole. Of course, we haven't had anyone for a very long time for a lot of different reasons, which doesn't need to be stated. But there is a resource of mydocumentedlife.org has lots of resources that you can use. They talk a lot about different programming, funding. You can hear different stories of different things that students have done abroad who've had advanced parole. So this will be a resource that you can tap into as well. Of course, things that you need to be mindful of is all the things that Alfonso and Anna have talked about. So definitely referring to them about important deadlines and dates, confirming whether or not you need to obtain a passport, understanding the timeline for your DACA renewal, because we want to make sure we can help you through this process. Certainly consulting Alfonso and his team and Anna and her team about what you need to do for advanced parole. I'm not the advanced parole expert. What I am the expert for is ensuring that we can process your application through our office in a timely manner, we will provide you with your acceptance letter for education abroad. And I know in Anna's slide, she talked about the letter for the academic advisor. We also will provide that letter for you. So you don't need to actually do anything with those two letters. Our office will help you with that. Certainly considering the best and worst case scenarios for you. And then of course, discussing this with your family and loved ones, because it's not just about you. We understand you have a greater community to worry about in terms of making a decision on whether or not going abroad is best for you. Of course, once you've made a decision, certainly your first stop is to consult the legal counsel and undocumented student programs before coming to myself or Macy. Once you've consulted with them, we will start to work with you and try to get you through the process. Key thing, if you email us, ensure we know you are a DACA applicant, because if we do not know that you are DACA, we're giving you information based on a normal UCR student application. We want to make sure we're giving you appropriate information in terms of deadlines and what needs to be done based on your status. Of course, what to do next, you're going to get a copy of this presentation, plus I have all your information. You're going to get the email triggered from the system that's going to have more detail broken down by each type of program of what to do next. Don't worry about the assessment slide. Of course, we're still off campus until January 31st, but once we're back, we will be back in our office up in Sky Hall 321. For at least the winter term, we're still meeting with students by appointment only. But if you have questions, you can always use our Zoom chat room Mondays and Wednesdays 1 to 4, or Tuesdays, Thursdays 10:30 to 1:30. So that's my session. Questions for any of us?